Namaste all. Welcome to the day 5 of the Let Go series, Discovering Lasting Happiness. So let's sit comfortably. We'll start with the prayer. Sit comfortably. Check that your posture is steady, back straight, eyes gently closed. Awareness on the whole body. Loosen all the joints. Bring the awareness to the breath. Observe the normal breathing. Continue watching the breath for a few rounds. Let's chant 3 rounds of Omkara each time you breathe in. As you breathe out, you continue with the Om chanting. Inhale deeply. Bring the palms together, Namaskara Mudra. Omkara in the prayer all together. Inhale deeply. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Gently bow down. With a few blinks, open your eyes. Namaste, welcome all. So the last 4 days we have been seeing the few important points from the Vedantic truth. So what is Vedanta all about? Is there a secrecy behind the Vedantic truths? So as Shastriji has put it in common terms, yeah, layman's terms, he's given common day-to-day examples to mystify all the Vedantic truth and the spiritual path. So we have seen that there is nothing secret about the spiritual path. Spiritual path makes us more sensitive to the needs of first our needs and then needs of others around us. So that helps in the progress in our spiritual path. So in each of these days, we saw that whether it be the Atma Pariksha, the Sukha Dukkha Pariksha, the Avastatraya Prasthana, then yesterday we saw the why the need for sadhana. So in all this, what is the one thing that we saw is that in everything it said that you feel the silence. Yeah, so the silence is the source of all the creation. So if that we can slow down, and what was the theme behind all this? It said from speed to slowness, from focusing to defocusing, from a pointedness to an expansive state. So if we can feel that whether in our yoga practice and in our all day-to-day activities, if we can be more mindful, yeah, that is what the whole journey is all about, being more aware, being more mindful. So yesterday we saw why it is very important to have sadhana, yeah, necessary for sadhana. You have the knowledge, what is given by the Vedanta, the Upanishad, different Upanishads, but if you don't put it into practice, then knowledge is just there, but it is not going to help us. So that is why the need for sadhana. And sadhana is not that, oh, I have learned, yeah, I've attended a Upanishad class, or I have been to a yoga class. That is not enough. Can we put it into practice in a day-to-day basis? Daily, are we following those Vedantic truths, Vedantic principles, the path of yoga? So today we have Vindhya Gupti with us and Vidya Ramani. Can you on your video, please? So Vidya Gupti will be talking about the Jnana Marga, so which is a path of yoga, the streams of yoga. One of the stream of yoga is the Jnana Marga. And after that, we have Vidya Ramani, who will be talking promising teachers. So welcome, Vidya. So over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Namaste to all. Namaste to all. I welcome you all to the 5th day of Jnana Saptaha. So till yesterday, the things that we saw was the Shastra Bhaga or the Siddhanta Marga, what we saw. Today, we are going to go ahead and see what actually makes the sadhana. How do we implement what we have learned in sadhana? So for this, let us not waste further time. We will just go ahead with the Jnana Marga. So till yesterday, the Shastra Bhaga revealed to us whether it was Panchakosha Viveka or the Avastatraya Parichaya, whatever that we have gone through, made it clear. 2 points were very clear to us, that when we go on the path of Vedanta, one thing is it will not be served on a platter to us. The thing most important is we need to have 2 things. One is a guru. Guru is someone who is Brahmanishta and Kshotriya. So when we say that Brahmanishta, it is like he not only knows the scripture, but also follows it, follows what he preaches. So that becomes the part that these are the qualities what are required in a guru. We need to have a guru. And the next part is the guru gives the tools to the students, the disciple, and asks them to contemplate, to conduct a self-enquiry, which is important for them to progress on their path of self-enquiry. So it is never that there are a set of tools that are given to the students. It differs from disciple to disciple. This is how the Vedantic truths have been revealed to students from the teachers. So these are very important 2 things that are required for us to move on the path of Vedanta. So when we say that the man has been like looking for happiness, earlier we saw that Sukha Pariksha, Dukkha Pariksha, Atma Pariksha, and Avastatraya, all these revealed to us theoretically that man was looking for happiness, eternal happiness. Now the question arises, can we really look for happiness that is in the outward things or the materialistic things that we have in the world? Why not? Because we have been seeing over the lectures that the glimpse of Shashwata Sukha is available in Bhoga Sukha too. See, for example, when we see this slide, when you eat a first, second, or third cookie, you just see that there is that Shashwata Sukha, glimpse of it when you are having the Bhoga Sukha. But The same thing when you go ahead and have a 28th, 29th, or maybe even much more, the same thing or the material which gave you sukha has turned into dukkha. So even though there was a glimpse of Shashvata Sukha and Bhoga Sukha, when the Bhoga Sukha itself becomes a reason for our dukkha, then there is no question of Shashvata Sukha in that. So Shastriji very beautifully puts it that catch hold of the state of mind when you have that glimpse and let go of the agency. So when we are holding on to that state, how do we continue to hold on to that state? So when we let go of the agency, what is happening at our mind level? There is a naidhanya. Let go brings naidhanya to us, which in turn leads to expansion, that is vistarata. Vistarata in turn leads to silence, which is ananda. This has been like brought to us in the previous 4 days of the lectures, the talks that we have had, and which reveal to us the Siddhanta or Shastra part. So now we delve further into how that Shastra or Siddhanta can be actually put into practice. So when we move on, we saw that there is like expansiveness we have been talking about. Why this need of sadhana or anything when it comes to the question of expansiveness? This is a simple example. When the spear of the nail is small, when you try to hit it with a hammer, the impact is not only greater, along with it, the damage is also greater. But similarly, if you put a expanded plate or something which is wider and then you try to hit, neither that the wall or the surface gets damaged, the impact is also lesser. So when you go to this state of vistarata, expansion, and then to silence, what happens is the impact is lesser of the worldly pressure, which helps us to move smoothly on the path of our sadhana. This is the main essence of the Shastra Bhaga, which has been like explained beautifully over the last 4 days, that we actually come to a experience where the expansiveness becomes very important for us to move on the path of sadhana. Now, keeping this in mind, let's move further. Why do we need sadhana? Yesterday in the lecture, we saw that sadhana is required. Like, how do we actually go ahead with the sadhana? The prakriya, the methods that we can follow or even develop our own prakriya. It is for vasana kshaya. So if we move, what is vasana kshaya? If we have to look at it this way. So as long as we identify ourselves to be a pot, colored in red or yellow, or if we even see the beautiful symbols that we possess, we are still the jiva, part of jiva. So the minute we identify ourselves that we are not the pots, we are the clay, then the vasana kshaya happens and there is the feeling of oneness or the eternal truth or the jnana is revealed to us. So for this part, vasana kshaya is very important, and that is the main crux for what, we have to move ahead on the path of sadhana so that this happens. The vasanas built over the cycles of life and death, the impressions that have been gained on our samskaras, all that has to be purified for us to see that our real self. So vasana kshaya leads to oneness with Brahman or the higher reality. So let us get it straight this way. As long as vasanas are there, the jiva is there. The minute vasanas go off, it is jivana mukta or the oneness with Brahman. So let's move back and see sadhana is required for vasana kshaya. So what are the methods for sadhana? So before we go to the methods of sadhana, let us see, for example, in day-to-day life. For example, I have a lecture to be conducted maybe next week and I need certain book for that. And I know that maybe Raghuramji has that book. Now I need to go and get that book from his house. So what do? I stay in South Bangalore. I need to go to Chandrapet to get it. Now I have different routes to be covered. I can choose a route, I can drive and reach there, get the book. Now what is clear is the destination is in mind. Now I know where I have to reach. And I know there are these paths because the Shastra Bhaga, what we dealt till yesterday, made it clear that we can go ahead and choose all these paths whichever are there. So the destination is there, the routes or the paths are there. Now, based on my need, my easiness of drive or the peaceful drive, I can choose any of the route. I can either pass through JP Nagar or go through Jayanagar, whichever that it depends on my choice again. So the drive that makes me peaceful and the drive that I find enjoyable, I choose that path to reach to Raghuramji's house, get the book for my preparation. So similarly, when I say this is peaceful for me or the stress-free drive for me to reach there, I can't say if somebody else chooses some other route to reach there is like, a wrong or a delayed route or something. So each one of us, based on our interests, our state of mind, like, if I choose this path, it makes me more peaceful. Based on that, we choose the path. So that becomes like the method of sadhana, because we have the destination in mind, we have the need what we have in our mind, we have the paths which are there, and we just need to choose one path. So when we say methods for sadhana, to put whatever we have learned in Shastra Bhaga into practice, we predominantly have these 4 paths. Which are they? They are Yoga Marga, the path of yoga, Jnana Marga, the path of right knowledge, Shubha Karma, the path of righteous and pious actions, Bhakti Marga, which is again the path of devotion and undying love. So today, out of all these 4 methods, we are going to deal with Jnana Marga, the path of right knowledge. So what is Jnana Marga? Just to know in a simple way, Jnana Marga is the path of knowledge for the self-realization. It is a self-inquiry, Adhyatma Vichara, to reach our own self. So what is the goal of Jnana Yoga? It is like, we have been seeing through the last 4 days, the talks, that after we reach even the Bhoga Sukha, the glimpse of Shashvata Sukha, in that there is always, when we come out of it, there is a suffering or misery which the man goes through. And he doesn't want to come a step down, but he wants to be established in that undisturbed happiness or tranquility, which actually makes him seek further. So this is actually the goal of Jnana Yoga, the Marga, Jnana Marga, which leads to that undisturbed happiness and tranquility. So what leads to Jnana Marga? Why do people choose Jnana Marga? Like I was discussing earlier, we choose many paths. Like there are many paths, we choose this path. So what leads to this Jnana Marga? If a person, there is an intense quest for self-realization. Like Bala was saying yesterday, there are series of questions, rudimentary questions to our existence. Like, who am I? What am I? What is my purpose in life? When all these questions come to us, it's not just the questions that come to us at one point of time and just passes away. The thing is, it stays with us. It starts to like haunt us, really, like, every minute, every breath we take, there is an intense quest for it, to realize who am I or what am I? When do I get to know this? What is my purpose of life? When this quest is so intense, this leads to, leads a person to choose Jnana Marga. Second one, I would say, is existential depression. What is again this? This is something that Sri Rama in Ramayana or Gautama Buddha went through. They were in eternal bliss materialistically. They had everything that they could like even think of. Everything was there, but still there was a misery. When they saw people around, when they saw then why this misery was there. So that led them to seek what is the actual purpose of life, the eternal truth. This existential depression again leads to Jnana Marga. So what is the third point? That is the saturation point in logic. Usually when we go through logic, the scientific reasoning in Jnana Marga, you always hit a dead end, come back. You try to derive this is not this, this is this. And you try out all the permutations and combinations, come back. There is only when these things happen, the internal, churning happens. That is when the quest, again, continuation of pointer one, that is the intensity of the quest becomes more. So that also leads to Jnana Marga. So now let's move on to the crux of today's discussion, the main phases or process of Jnana Marga. What is this? The Jnana Marga, the phases that has on this path. So it starts with Shravana. Let me not go the piece by piece, the stage by stage. It becomes very theoretical. Let us get into real life example, and then we will go ahead and try to understand these phases of Jnana Marga. So take for example, on an idyllic day when we don't have anything much to do, Netflix is not working, there is no power, nothing, and we have an idyllic day. And usually when we are in that mode or anything, we would like to eat something or have a cup of coffee or something. But when you have nothing to do, usually people do get these sort of questions that what is the purpose of my life? Who am I? Why am I like this? So these questions come to us. Generally, anyone, I don't think any person on this planet wouldn't have got this question at any point of time. It's very rudimentary. At any point passing time, we would have got this question like, why am I like this? Who am I? Or anything. So for many people, it might stop at this. You might have a cup of coffee and then pass away. The power might be restored. We might get back to watching movie, or we might get back to working or taking care of kids, all this. But if that question stays within us and we start seeking out knowledge or wisdom related to that question, or we start looking out from where do we get the information related to this question. When you get this question and this question doesn't give you an answer, and in turn it gives you a process, there starts a process within you, there starts the phase of Shravana. Shravana is not like only listening to the scriptures or discourses or anything. When you even read or get knowledge through anything, for this, I can put that these process or the phases can be applied for all the phases of learning. But since we are dealing with Atma Vichara, I would like to stick to that and go ahead with the discussion on these lines. So when you say start gathering information about this, when the process starts, that is the phase of Shravana. So Atma Parichaya starts happening. So when this starts, the process of churning, when all this knowledge is coming up, what happens is the manana starts to take place. Manana, when it is happening, you don't look at others, the situations of others' life or others, and then you dissect that this is right and this is wrong based on the Shravana that you have gone through. But no, based on our mistakes or what we do in day-to-day life, you apply that what you have got through Shravana, and that actually becomes your abhyasa. That every situation you go through, okay, this is this, then you cut down, the flow chart comes up, and then you go ahead with realization on that. That becomes Atma Abhyasa. Every minute, every breath you take, you start implementing what you have gained, the knowledge you have gained through Shravana, through Manana. that is the Atma Abhyasa, the real churning, the process has started implementing furthermore. So when this process takes ahead a proper shape, and there is no external, like you have been like dissecting the situations of day-to-day life, you are established in that phase where that Shravana and Manana are going ahead, then it is the phase of Atmanishta, when you actually are established in the state of self-inquiry. You don't need an external trigger to be like, reminded of certain things. You just go ahead on this path uninterrupted, which will reveal the Jnana, eternal higher truth to you. So these are the process or the phases on the path of Jnana. So let me now get on to the next path, the extracts, or I would rather put it in these words that these are based on the experiences of where I stand on the path of Jnana Yoga, which I would be sharing with you all. First one would be free will. That is, it's the human being which has this ability to either do, not to do, or do certain things differently. So that is kartum, akartum, and anyatha kartum. So we need to utilize this one to reach to the higher truths, that is the jnana. So the next point would be the freedom from freedom to seek. So we all have this, like, when the Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana starts, we have that freedom to seek. We come to that ecstasy. There is that eternal freedom to seek. The self-inquiry starts. But when we actually come closer to the higher truth, the freedom to seek also goes off. There is a freedom from that freedom to seek as well. So the next one would be derivation and not conclusion. Experience based, trust me, this is one of my favorite things too. I would always think of it this way: when we have to go ahead with not deriving and concluding, actually we derive it. Let's take a real life example. As a mother of two young girls, when they come to me with a mathematics test paper, I would see at the problems and I would ask them like, okay, how did you solve this? So my daughter says that, okay, the answer is 264. I say, no, how do you actually solve this problem? So she said, Ma, Sanjana also got this answer. So it is more of like, the conclusion, the solution that is matters, that the working is not focused upon. This is what we all do when we utter simple things like, God is everywhere. I can see God in others. Aham Brahmasmi. It is all conclusion, but we don't have it in experience. As we reach on the truth, simple truths, step by step, and then go to a solution or conclusion, it is experiential. Jnana has to progress on this path, this way. The next point would be it's being and not becoming. So Upanishad knowledge is all based on yen neti neti. So it's not me, this is not me. We never transform ourselves into a better being, but we already are a better being which is clouded with covers of, like a diamond is always covered with gold. We just need a polishing. It's always, it is the being, it's not the becoming. The being has to be revealed. The Brahman, the eternal joy is within us. So the Vedanta way says that it is neti neti, that is, it is not me, through which we have to go on to establish that state of being and not becoming. We have been discussing about let go. So it is always the let go of the speed, not the competence. Again, please go back. The nail and the tongue, what we have earlier discussed, seen in the slides before that. When we are in the state of let go and expansiveness, the pressures of the outward world becomes very minimal, and that only helps us to forego the speed and not the competence. Yes, this another one is a highly Vedantic truth. dualities are not opposite of higher reality, but representation or part of it. What do we mean by this? That if I say I am a human being and there is a higher reality, I do not say that I and higher reality are opposite to that. We only say that I am also part of it or representation. So when I experience that jnana, I do not like forego or forsake this being. It's only that I polish myself to be a higher reality. So dualities will never be opposite. It is only like the pot and the clay. The clay is the eternal form. The pot is the duality where we feel that we are not at that, but we are still the pot. Okay, now the next one would be the seek should be systematic but not chaotic. The self-inquiry that we conduct should always go on the path of that. For example, we go to a supermarket and then, we need to buy something. We go talk to a friend. We discuss everything and actually forget about the buying and come back. So the main purpose for which we started was forgotten. So when we seek, when the self-inquiry is being conducted, it should always be systematic but not chaotic. It should not lead from one to another, and the main purpose of our self-inquiry should not be forgotten. It should always progress on this path. And next one is, truth is elusive. Yes, it is like four blind men looking at or feeling the elephant. So when you say that, one sees the trunk, touches it and says that this is elephant, one touches this tail, one the leg, everything, but they say that this is elephant. We can't say that that is not elephant, though they are not seeing it as a whole, but everything is a representation of that. Dhyana is always like this. Each one has a path and each one has his own investigation, and it is revealed in a different way to everyone. Lastly, everything and nothing. This is again the Vedantic Shunya concept, which I'm trying to put it in a simple way. When we say we know everything and nothing, it is still final. But when we say something, it still has a journey. So when we say that, what does it mean? Everything, a jnani, when he is self-realized, he says, I know everything. A bhakta, when he is on the path of bhakti, he says that I know nothing, I surrender at your feet. But when we say that I am not this, but I am something, I own this, I have these many possessions and all, then we really have a journey. It might be oscillating, like everything and something can go together. We keep oscillating, and nothing and something also we can be oscillating, and then still we have a journey. But if we say that something is the only thing, then we have a longer journey to take that way. So with all these points, I would like to end my session. Keep your eyes closed and try to contemplate on the points discussed. The next part of the series, today's talk, will be held by Mrs. Vidya Ramani. Close your eyes, contemplate on the thoughts discussed so far. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vidya. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaste, all of you. I am Vidya. I shall be taking you all through Yoga Marga. Let me just share the slides. Okay. We just saw the path of jnana to reach the tranquility. So beautifully explained by Vidya. Now let us do a deep dive into achieving the silence or the tranquility through Yoga Marga. Okay. Now what is yoga? Yoga is calming down the mind is yoga. Now, how do I calm down? Very simple. Let go. Let go of what I am holding on to. An example on let go. Have you ever felt a sense of satisfaction when you finish writing an exam? A child prepares for the exam, goes to the exam hall until it reaches the exam hall, gets the paper in his or her hand and start writing the answers. There is a lot of anxiety in the mind. Okay. Now the child gets the paper, writes down the answer. After 2 to 3 hours, child comes out of the exam hall. The child is completely relieved because it was holding on to a thought that how would be my paper? How am I going to write? Right? So once it is done, the child is completely relaxed because it has let go of the tension of writing that particular paper. What will be the result? That is immaterial. Right? So in this Yoga Marga, let us now look into the definition given by sage Patanjali, who says, Yogaha Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Chitta, that is mind. What are vrittis? Fluctuations of the mind. I can also say modifications of the mind. Nirodha. I wouldn't say control, rather I would say mastery. Okay, mastery over the fluctuations of the mind is yoga. Another definition by Yoga Vashishta, yoga mana prashamana upayah. Mellowing down the mind is yoga. Prashamana. What do I mean by prashamana? Prashamana is slowing down. Again, example, child is preparing for the exam. It goes into the exam hall. Lot of thoughts. How will be my paper? How will be my paper? Repeated thoughts. That will cause a lot of speed in the mind. So that particular time, prashamana will help. Okay, we may not be able to completely come out of that thought, which is causing a lot of anxiety, but slowing down definitely helps. Okay. So how do I calm down the mind? Shastri Ji has beautifully explained in this book. He says that calming down the mind is a natural process. It is already present in our system, in our body. Our body has the ability to listen to the instructions that we give to the mind. For example, you are going for a walk with your wife, husband, or a friend. Both of you have started walking at the same pace. Suddenly you see that your friend or your husband or wife has gone ahead of you. Then what do you say? Hey, please stop, let me join you. The moment you say, please stop, I want to join you, immediately your friend slows down. That means that instruction has already gone to that friend's mind and he has paused, right? So our mind has that ability to immediately grasp the instruction and slow down. Similarly, you go to a doctor for if you are sick. After a few discussion, the doctor tells you to lie down, and with his stethoscope, he will put one end of the stethoscope on your chest. He will tell you, breathe in and breathe out deeply. Initially, you may not, because you might have some anxiety, but later, after 2-3 rounds, you immediately start to slow down your breath, right? So, which shows that our mind and body has the capacity to slow down automatically, right? Okay. So that was the example of slowing down at the mind level. Next is, how do I slow down or calm down at Vaksthana, that is at speech level. Okay. So he has beautifully explained how to bring about the calmness at speech level. He says that through Shabda, that is the sound as a vehicle, one can apply the slowing process. When we listen to the Shabda of the sentences and the words, we can calm down. Example, when we are angry, okay, on a person, what happens to our body? Firstly, our breath will be very fast. Second, there will be some sort of a slight trembling in our body. And what about the mind? It is running at 100 km per hour, even more than that. Vega. It is just running at high speed, thinking about all the negative thoughts that I have towards that person. Every second to second, I keep forming some images about that person. He is not listening, he is not listening, he is not doing what I say, etc. etc. Body and mind are connected. If the body is relaxed, vice versa, mind also will be relaxed. If the mind is fast, body also will not be at peace. So, what can I do at that moment? Shastri Ji says, slow down, step back and observe. Step back and observe. That is why he has explained to observe the Shabda of each word or each sentence. So at that moment when I'm angry, yes, it is very difficult. Speaking is easy, but we can try. Stepping back and being mindful, moving from mindful to mindfulness will help in calming down. Okay, calming down at the speech level, which will ultimately lead to silence. So, in the previous slide, I showed that breaking the sentences into words, words into letters, all this lead to Om. Okay, so and then from Om to silence. Okay, so Om comprises of A, Uma, where A is considered crude, U is considered as subtler, Ma as more subtler. Ultimately, this Omkara leads us to silence. That is, in a nutshell, he says that to be mindful and pause to attain the silence. Oh, now a beautiful example quoted in the book, which is from Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa's Gospel. Okay. Very beautiful example. It goes like this. The example is about doing Sandhya Vandanam. Okay. The performance of Sandhya Vandana, in short, it is called a Sandhya. It's a daily ritual which a brahmacharin or a householder has to do. It takes too much of time and it is a laborious process. It requires water, vessels, a clean place. Okay. So, Sri Ramakrishna says, he has suggested that one need not do Sandhya Vandana, which becomes a mechanical process. And if one chants Gayatri mantra, a Vedic mantra, which is a very powerful mantra, that is more than enough. But having said that, the Gayatri mantra needs to be chanted by knowing the complete meaning of it. Then the Sandhya Vandana need not be performed. Okay, then the meaning of Sandhya merges into Gayatri. Okay. He has further simplified that the mantra Om indicates Supreme Brahman. It is much more powerful than Sandhya Vandana itself. And this Gayatri mantra merges into Om. Therefore, if I chant mantra Om with intense feeling, knowing its full meaning, then both Sandhya Vandanam and Gayatri will merge into Om. Then chanting of Om is more than enough. Okay? The main point that he specifies here is any mantra that a person chants will purify the mind. Okay, such a beautiful example is Sri Ramakrishna explains that any mantra needs to be chanted knowing its full meaning to achieve its benefit. Okay. Now, first we saw calming down the mind, right? That was calming down the mind was a natural process. Second was calming down at Vaksthana, speech level. That was how was it doable? By being mindful and becoming aware. Okay. The next is calming down at Swasasthana. Okay. How do I calm down at Swasasthana? Okay. We need to bring stillness in our breath, regulating our breath. How can we achieve that stillness, or how can we regulate our breath? That can be achieved through Nadi Shuddhi Pranayama. Most of you must be aware of Nadi Shuddhi Pranayama, alternate nostril breathing. It helps us to balance the prana throughout the body. Okay, so Nadi Shuddhi Pranayama helps to clear all the subtle channels of the body. What are those subtle channels? Those are called subtle channels, are called nadis. So they help to clear the nadis, thereby allowing the free flow of prana. Okay, all cellular level disturbances vanish with this practice. Okay, so what do I achieve by doing Nadi Shuddhi Pranayama? By calming down at the Swasasthana, I become slow. The Vega in the mind slows down because I am doing Prashamana. I am continuously doing Prashamana, Mana Prashamana, which leads to Naidhanya. Okay, the inner Vega, the speed of mind reduces, the ruminating thought reduces. That will help me to achieve that silence, right? So how can I bring about slowness? Of course, asana, pranayama, they're all tools available to bring about that calmness. Okay? See, tools to bring down the mind to zero. Ultimately, we all want to achieve that silence, right? Okay. This is an important, interesting slide. What happens when I tell someone you need to calm down the mind? Sometimes fear of calming down immediately will bring that fastness of the mind, because you will start thinking, how am I going to calm down? How am I going to calm down? That statement keeps going, ruminating in your mind, right? Okay. So an example, I know a person who is 70-year-old uncle who has this problem of not sleeping in the night. Okay. He always says that whenever I lie down, I am not going to get sleep. That he has already decided. Okay. So more than he not getting the sleep, there is a fear of not getting the sleep. Okay. Fear of not getting sleep. That is only making him not sleep at all. Right. So that is causing him not to sleep in the night. Okay. The second thing which causes fastness of the mind is fear of activity. What is activity? Any action. Okay. We can consider any activity as a vyapara. Activity is called vyapara as holy or Brahma sadhana. Then the fear will automatically vanish, which means that let us not do any actions for the sake of doing it. Instead, do it with utmost sincerity, dutifully. That is what is that will help to remove that fear of activity. Okay. Now, indriyas are nothing but the sense organs, right? Now, every indriya vyapara means the sense organs. So every indriya vyapara is a mechanism by which our boredom diffuses, resulting in a purified mind. So all these, see, when we take care of fear of activity, fear of calming down, And if our indriyas, if we are able to diffuse our boredom through indriyas, then what we achieve is a relaxed mind. Okay. What is silence? The entire universe is born out of silence, and it ends in silence. If we consider the universe reverentially, that is how we can achieve it, by avoiding to talk negative and avoid criticism to achieve that silence. Because the moment we criticize and talk negative about someone or anything, that immediately causes some ripples, disturbances in the mind, right? Modifications in the mind. Therefore, we are not able to achieve that silence, because all that we will be doing is only think about those thoughts, which will, again, one negative thought will lead to the other, right? So avoid criticism to achieve that silence, right? So in a nutshell, Yoga Marga, he explains in 3 steps: calming down the mind, calming down at the speech level, calming down at the swasas at the breathing level, and how to avoid that fastness and how to remove that fear from us. So pranayama, asanas are the tools which will help us to achieve this silence. Thank you all. Namaste.
Thank you, Vidya and Vidya, for a wonderful presentation of what is the path of jnana, the knowledge, and the Yoga Marga. Since many of us have chosen the path of yoga, we have been doing our yoga practice. So with the practice, the knowledge also is important, because knowledge helps you to enhance your practice. So not necessary that you choose the path of knowledge, you have to be dull, serious. No, knowledge reduces all your doubts, confusion that you have, the ignorance. Yeah, so that is like a revelation for us. So and then your practice becomes much more enhancing, and you feel, yes, the path that you have chosen is benefiting you. So over to Raghuramji. You need to unmute yourself. Yes.
Namaste, everyone. Wonderful presentations, both Jnana Marga and Yoga Marga. It is the Yoga Marga which is known as the Raja Yoga Marga. And under the Raja Yoga Marga, we have all these margas like Kriya Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, and Ashtanga Vinyas Yoga. All these things fall under Raja Yoga Marga. It's a broad classification. Under the Jnana Yoga, we know study of the scriptures and all that, and then study of self-inquiry. All these things are the part of it. Vindhya very beautifully presented all those ideas, various ideas that were there in the Jnana Marga, as Shastriji put it. But let me try to open a different dimension for the benefit of everybody. I'm fully convinced, I'm fully satisfied with the way that the margas are presented. But to add something more than that, which probably must have, I acquired all that idea from discussions and private discussions with Shastriji. Because what used to happen is, whenever we met, it is only the discussion was yoga. There was nothing else that was going on. So therefore, a lot of things that we were clarifying, and we were trying to understand and all those things. So when you look at it, these two techniques, when you look at it, these two are two different types of psychology. One psychology is the extrovert psychology, and the other is the introvert psychology. This is what Carl Gustav Jung talks about it. That's why basically The modern psychology separates, and also Indian philosophy also separates these two people and those two kind of psychologies that are there. Some people by nature, they're extrovert. Some people by nature, they're introvert. Introvert people are the people that they work so much at the intellect level, they work at the inner level, and then they clarify the things. And then once they clarify inner level, then it is easy for them to be in that state. That clarification is necessary. That clarification is what is done by Shravana and then Manana. And then finally they established in that state, and that's what is Nididhyasa. So when you look at this way, that is the people who are introvert, they look at inwardly, you see that ultimate of our nature itself is the bliss, peace, tranquility. And peace and tranquility, all those things are in the mind. It's not coming from outside. That's what Vindhya presented very beautifully. It is the mind that we have that peaceful state. And there is nothing which is greater than the peace. I can sacrifice anything, but not for the sake of this peace of mind. I'm arguing with somebody because arguing is the way that your intellect performs. But then you see that the argument is not leading anywhere else, but it is taking away my peace of mind. I don't argue. I just accept it. I just accept it does not mean that basically that I have changed my stand or I have corrupted myself. No, nothing like that. I know very well. But more than knowing very well, I know very well also another fact that logic is not going to take me anywhere. Vado navalambhya, that's what Shastras say. It's all right. Like Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, how beautifully he presented the idea when Keshav Chandra Sen was continuously, vehemently arguing Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, God does not exist, everything is mechanical, everything is by the formulae, by rules, by laws, that nature functions and all those things. Ramakrishna was listening, and then happily, with a smile on his face. So then they were surprised. They said, Ramakrishna, who followed so much of Bhakti Marga, that is God, and then he also followed so much of the idea of Kali and all those things. But in spite of it, he was just happily listening to Keshav, so surprised. And then finally, they asked Thakur, you followed Kali, and then how is that you are enjoying whatever that Keshav is talking? Ramakrishna smiled and said one thing happily. He said, but for God, nobody would have created an intellect like Keshav. So that means to say all the argument is just dropped because Keshav was all the time saying that there is no God. But Ramakrishna Paramahamsa so easily twisted it to one simple argument, but for God, nobody would have created. So, and including Keshav became very easy. So therefore, basically, logic takes you further, but then what happens is, there are three different positions that are there. There is one way that people use the logic or argumentation. This is what is Vada. It doesn't read anywhere. It is like that you argue your way and the other argues the other way. But then there is another problem that comes in the logic argumentation is that it slowly becomes your ego. Its point of interest has become your point of ego. No, there is nothing like ego about that. So you don't have to hold on to it if it just drops. Drops fine. And then this is what is called as Vivada. So Vada, Vivada. And then there is another thing that you just do not have any point, but then you still argue with it, what we call it as Vitandavada. But then apart from these things, there is another Vada, which is called as Samvada. Samvada is essentially any logic, any idea that we present is such a way that it elevates us. And we have two such examples. One is the Shankara Mandana Mishra Samvada, and another is the Samvada, that is Krishna, Arjuna, that became Bhagavad Gita. You look at both these texts, both these cases where a Samvada is going to elevate that. And Samvada is dependent on, or Vada depends upon intellect. Intellect is the result. Intellect is the one which results into Jnana Yoga, Jnana, and then a Jnana, where the logic, where the argumentation is to see that you elevate the condition, and that's what is called as Samvada. So when it is Samvada, then that what outcome of all that is what is called as Jnana Yoga. So Indian philosophy never prevented you from logic or argumentation and inquiry. Several other religions, they have stopped you from inquiring. They prevented you from that. What is said is true, and there is nothing more than that available. We come across that in the other religions, but whereas in Indian philosophy, that is not the stand that we have taken. Because that we have not taken that kind of a stand of I am right and nobody else is right kind of a stand. Because of that only, our culture survived for 10,000 years. It is because that we have an opportunity for questioning, for logic, for arguing for questioning. That's why we have one Upanishad called as the Prashnopanishad. So we, if we want to uphold our Indian culture, Indian spirituality, and the way that we progress in the spiritual level, it is this, keeping this logic or the Jnana Yoga becomes very, very important. So that's the aspect of Jnana Yoga. But what Vidya presented is about the Yoga Marga. That's what is the Raja Yoga Marga. Very important aspect of Raja Yoga Marga is the sankalpa with which that we do it, the confidence with which we do it. I use my self-discipline, all those things, because of my willpower. Willpower is the root cause for growth in the Raja Yoga. But then we need to understand one thing, that willpower is not just once it is like that. By continuing to practice the discipline, then we grow. Like for example, few days you do the asanas, then you have increased your willpower to go to practicing and enjoying the pranayama. And few days of practicing of enjoying the pranayama, and then which will lead you to meditation. Jump into meditation straight forward, then 2-3 minutes you do meditation, then you feel tired or you feel distracted, mind goes elsewhere, and then you feel that you are not fit for that. We have such beautiful examples in the scriptures to show that how the discipline, step by step they have done, they have practiced, so that the more that they practice, they have increased their willpower. The more that they did it, they enhanced their willpower. Like for example, when the legendary story or the Puranic story where Parvati was doing meditation for Shiva, and then there was such a severe austerity that she was doing, but then step by step, in the beginning that she just gave up all the vegetable, all the vegetation, and then only thing she was doing are only leaves and other things she gave up. Then after some sadhana and all that discipline, she gave up the leaves also. That's why she was known as Aparna, because Parna means leaves, gave up Parna. He became Aparna. So this way, when she went ahead, and finally she reached the goal. So Shastriji always used to insist that people who are taken to Raja Yoga Marga, then we should also make sure that we don't excess ourselves. It's not to torture the body. It is not to hit the body or make the body to suffer, but it is to see that how we can use step by step, little by little, going forward. That's why Shastriji always used to quote from the from the Mandukya Upanishad Karika, who says, Shanaihi Uparamet Buddhyatriti Gruhitaya. Steadily, step by step, progress in the forward direction. That's what is the idea. Your progressing is very important. You are taking seriously the practices and going ahead is important. Practice should be taken seriously, but you should not make your life serious. Life should be full of joy. Life should be full of, the energy kind of a thing. But then life should not be negative. Yes, sadhana should be serious. Sadhana should be taken forward. When once we do that, then Raja Yoga Marga, Jnana Yoga Marga become our own. Another important aspect that I would like to say, because we have already covered the other techniques also the other days, very important aspect is that it is not that somebody is totally extrovert, somebody totally introvert, somebody is totally one way or the other. There is one predominant tendency within us, but the other things are there also with us. Therefore, what has to happen is that look at yourself, observe yourself, know yourself in such a way that are you more available for the introvertness? That's what is then for such a person, Jnana Marga is very good. And sometimes you say that you are somebody who can discipline, and therefore Yoga Marga is very good. Generally speaking, that there are times when you sit down and quietly analyze yourself after the Sandhya, and that's the time Jnana Marga is very good. Whereas morning when you get up, you have energy in the body and you're physical, you need to do that work. That's why in all the schools everywhere, practicing of asanas, practicing of pranayama is taken up in the morning, and then people do that. And pranayama and meditation, particularly it is slowing down, calming down. Night we take it up. The idea is that after pranayama, you go into meditation, calming down the mind. You're blissful there. That's what is the idea. Now the practice is that it's not just only what we do or not. It's, see, give time for yoga, give time for Jnana Marga, and then within that period of time, maybe 1 hour, 2 hours a day, that you can just alternate various practice of yoga, because our culture is so rich with all kinds of practices. So, and then your training also has given so many practices, and there are so many yoga teachers, there are so many rishis who have come. Even the modern rishis, they also gave so many techniques. Let's keep that our minds open, hearts open to all these techniques, and every technique has its own great advantage, development and all that. So therefore, when we, from the point of view of people who have gone to the original philosophy of yoga like Shastriji, and having been following the Shastriji's ideas, what we need to have is that openness and respect for every saint, every sage that is given. It is given. That's why we say that there are so many Endaro Mahanubhavalu, Andariki Vandanamalu. There are so many saints who have given us so many paths. Let's continue to look into all those things. Once again, thank you so much for Vindhya and Vidya. What a wonderful presentation today we had. Such a lovely kind of this thing. And particularly I should appreciate this slides that you have presented. Very clear and very meaningful. Wish you all the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Raghuramji. Can we take up the questions? There is one question which has come up.
Right.
Can you see that? Is it
What
okay to chant Om alone?
Chant Om alone?
Yeah.
I was told one should do it in group, never alone. Otherwise it will be left aloof in the world. Good question. In fact, on the other side, I would like to say, logically, when you look at it, A represents the gross world, U is the subtle, and the causal world is, that means to say you're going from gross to subtle to causal, deeper and deeper inside. So we all start doing Om together. You can do it in together, but then as you're proceeding Om, you're going to subtler and subtler at the individual level. So therefore, beginning we might start together, but then don't worry about the ending, because it's your own. You go deep inside, or all alone yourself. The sadhana of Om is to see that it will slowly disconnect you from the world outside to go to inner silence. That's the reason why we have Omkara Chatushpaditavyam Omkaram. There are 4 padas that are there in Omkara. Akara Pradhamastanaha, Ukara Dvitiya, Tritiya Makara. And then 4th pada is the total inner silence. Nanta Prajnam, na Vihiprajnam, no Bhayata Prajnam, na Prajnam, na Prajnam. That's what is Mandukya Upanishad describes about that. At that silence, there is nobody outside, does not enter into you. You are all by yourself. Omkara, we should treat it as a beautiful bridge between outer to inner, causal to, grosser to causal, and then the way that you are empowering yourself within. For that, we are doing Om. That's why Om is known as Taraka Mantra. Om alone stands as a Taraka Mantra. Other Taraka Mantras we have, Rama Taraka Mantra, etc., etc. But Om alone stands as a Taraka Mantra. Taraka means that which takes you across. Tarati iti Taraka Mantra, that which it takes across. The very description of Om itself shows that how it takes you across from the material world outside to infinite inner silence. Therefore, it is fine to do that Om. Please try to do that. There are two ways of doing it. You can say it loud or you can tell mentally, because both these things have their own benefits in our system. Yeah. Are the different paths that we have learned from teacher to be kept to ourselves? How can we share it? Absolutely no problem in sharing with the others. But one thing that we need to remember is that before even sharing, think of it, whether that person is a sadhaka or whether his approach is for the sake of learning and growing. Otherwise, that you are doing disservice to the Shastra, to the knowledge itself. We have responsibility towards the knowledge. That's what is called as. So we have Runa. That means we have responsibility to pay. And that is, we have a Runa for the Jnana. Jnana Runa, we have to do that. Jnana Runa is that like this knowledge is like our parents. It's like more than our parents. I do not allow anybody to avahelana, that means to say, make a casual remark, make a fun of this knowledge. Any knowledge that is there, we should not allow somebody to make fun of it. So if that is the way that you really sense, don't do that. Don't disclose or do that. Yeah, we have the knowledge. See, that's the reason why I said that this argumentation, logic, does not lead you anywhere. And if you are trying to convince somebody who decided that he will not get convinced, he decided that he will not follow this, then leave him alone. Don't use this knowledge as, it's a sacred knowledge. It's an extraordinary, wonderful knowledge. Let's not use that, all those things. How will you know that I'm growing? Is the reference point, the Nididhyasana, and defocus. The growing towards the ultimate goal is, there are 2-3 indications that are there. One thing is that you are becoming more and more silent, less and less argumentative. And another very important aspect is that you find peace and self within yourself. You find peace and bliss within yourself. That means to say, your dependency, avalambana on the world outside becomes less and less important. And you are stronger and stronger inside. This is the important aspect of the way that your growth takes place. And all these things you are doing, not to please anybody, not to displease anybody, but you are doing for the sake of your own going to peace, your own going to tranquility. In fact, when I was very young, I had a colleague, and he was very rajasic. He had given to this, somehow came across his meditation, and then his wedding was there, and then I went for his wedding. But because before that he is going to be his would-be wife, and he has introduced that I am somebody very close to him, and also not only very close, but I am somebody he respects me so much as a spiritual guide and this and that. So I went to his wedding, and then his mother-in-law came shivering, and I said, Raghuramji, you should help me. I said, what happened? He said, Muhurta is coming up, and then I don't know what happened. He just closed his house and room, and I said he's meditating. My God. And then what to do? I went there, and then I knocked on the door and all that, start talking to him. Then he found, something that made him angry, and then he went for meditation. Meditation is a sacred tool. Meditation is an extraordinarily wonderful sadhana. You should not use it as an excuse for all kinds of things. Let's keep up the sacredness of the sadhana. We need to do that. Thank you. Any more questions or anything that you would like to ask? There's a nice time. You could always make an inquiry.
Radharamji, 2 questions are there. Can you talk more about silence?
Yeah, we are all silent. Yeah, tell me, Vijay, what is that?
Yeah, there's one more question.
If one is in spiritual path, does one lose the joy within? No, it enhances the joy so much. He finds himself to be joy within himself. Therefore, the simple significant idea about that is, the more and more that you try to find a joy within yourself, your avalambana, dependence on the outside joy, outside objects for the sake of joy, reduces in 2 ways. One is that outside objects giving you joy will reduce dependency on the object world outside. Second thing is that even small little things that are there that can give you joy. That's why often people keep saying that somebody was a sadhaka. The difference between ordinary person and the sadhaka is, ordinary person goes to do the things for the sake of happiness. A spiritual person happily does. That's all the simple. You are happy anyway, and then you do the activity, and that activity does not rob your happiness that is there within. If you do that way, then you are really going in the spiritual path. Can we talk about ego being the hurdle in the Jnana Marga? Yeah. So, so one thing that really is the silence is the inner silence. Deep inside your silence, outside whatever may be. Have you heard of a saint by name Nisargadatta Maharaj? There's a beautiful book. I Am That. He has written a book, Nisargadatta Maharaj. In that book, he has beautifully given. In fact, the idea is that he was sitting in the busy streets of Bombay, and then he was doing sadhana and all those things. And a lot of people used to guide. In fact, one person who was guided by him was Balsekar, and Balsekar was from Bangalore. He has written that book. And this person was in the city market and den of the market, and then he used to sadhana. So that means to say, outside that you have this big noise and all this turmoil, but deep inside you have that sadhana. In fact, DVG also writes beautifully saying that there are 2 different corners within us, and then one is that where there's a lot of activity going on, there's a lot of involvement is going on. Deep inside Antarakona, that is deep inside, that we have a space within us where we are absolutely in silence, which means to say we are one with the divinity. And this is what we need to practice. Once we do that, then we can involve in the world outside in activity, but at the same time, I'm always in touch with the silence that's there within. And that silence is the most important aspect of our being, and we need to get into that state of silence. And people who do not understand, in touch with that silence or anything like that, then they get easily caught up in the activity outside. You see, that's a very important point about the modern psychology teaches us the psychology and then trying to talk with the people and all those things. But the big problem that they find is that their psychology gets into disturbances, ruined. Even though they talk to the people and all that, they can help it. But over a period of time, they see that all those problems which were there, they internalize within themselves and they become crazy. So therefore, it is necessary. It is necessary that we have to. They in the modern psychology, they say that they have to go to the self-analysis, self-psychology, before they take up the practice. But well, fine, that is one solution. But then, in spite of it, I've seen that people simply become part of that psychology that they try to undergo. So it's a very big issue, because the simple thing is that before going to that, they did not practice the method of keeping inner silence intact. So, and will you please repeat that DVG maybe? ಎರಡು ಕೋಣೆಗಳಿದೆ, ಒಳಕೋಣೆ and ಹೊರಕೋಣೆ, the inner chamber and outer chamber. And ಹೊರಕೋಣೆದಲ್ಲಿ, that means outer chamber, that you do all this kind of an activities. ಒಳಕೋಣೆ, that means the inner, keep it the silence, Mankutimma, he says that in the Mankutimma Kakka. And I don't know exact words of those things, but then just the meaning, a number of times that people quote that. That's a very important thing. So there's another thing. Outer side is what we are identified with doing. Inner side is where. Yes, somebody has written that Mankuti Manakanta. Beautiful. So many people that the outside is called as the doing, and inside is what is called as the being. So you have that being aspect within you, and then you continue with the doing, not getting caught up in that doing aspect.
There's one question, Raghuramji. How do you make young people to believe in higher consciousness and surrender to the Supreme?
See, higher, that's why all these things are a lot of words. I would not put it that way. I would put it this way, that we have the activity portion that we are doing it outside. But then before you do the activity outside, that there is something which is there inside. You actually plan the whole thing and then give a manifestation outside. That planning and all those things that you have is in a unmanifest level of your being, unmanifest level of your, any small little simple thing. Like for example, I want to make a kite. The kite picture is there within the unmanifest, and then it comes to the manifestation. The same thing is there with the whole universe. Like for example, if you take a seed, the seed has whole tree in it, but then that tree is in an unmanifest way. What we call it as the tree intelligence is there, or in that particular space. So, and then it comes to manifest outside. Within us also, that there is something which can come to the manifestation outside, all those things. So this is one aspect of it, a deeper aspect of it, gross and subtle. But then there is one more thing that is there deeper inside, where the tendencies and the energy, all those things are together. That's what is called as causal. From the causal level, all these things come up. So that is what we all have it. Everybody has it. Without that energy, without any that direction, then it cannot manifest in the form of unmanifest level, and from there come to manifest level. I look at this simple way. There is no question of higher consciousness, lower consciousness. At the causal level, that we are already, at the unmanifest level, we are already specified. It's not general. That means to say, outside it might look to be general, but inside it is very specific. Like every mango seed looks the same, but then when you plant the mango seed, that you see that variety of mangoes come up. Every stem of rose plant looks the same green, same kind of thorn are there. But when the manifestation takes place, one rose is a full-blooded red rose, another is a multicolored rose. So that means to set manifestation level, they are different, which means basically deep inside unmanifest level that they are different. But beyond that, whatever it is there, it is nothing but energy. It's nothing but different directions. Like the way sun is nothing but energy, and use rays in different directions like that. This is what we call it as the inner or subtler kind of a level, not mystic kind of a thing. So therefore, in fact, we should say to the children that, keep this model with you. This is what Indian philosophy has given. Anytime it will be useful, and you don't have to do anything for that. All that what you need to do is to see that how outer level you create harmony, so that outer level you can live in a peaceful way.
There is one question which is up.
Ah.
It says, how do you make the young people believe in higher consciousness?
That is what I said. I don't have to make them believe in a higher. In fact, the whole of Indian philosophy, there is nothing like a belief. It's so logical. It's so clear. Well, look at the way that whether it is Vidya or Vidya presented, it's all very logically presented. That these are the things that are available. We don't have to talk about higher consciousness at all. We don't, at least I don't encourage on this idea of higher consciousness and mystic consciousness. There's nothing like mysticism about that. It's all created. In fact, when Indian philosophy talked about dharma and various aspects of dharma also, they did not bring about the concept of something that you need to believe. You believe in this, you believe in that. Is not there at all.
There's one question. It says every activity vyapara should be considered a holy. How do I do that?
Yes, holy, because that the intention is holy. That means to say it's up to you that what is that intention behind it. Can you make that intention holy? It's not to hurt anybody. It's not to destroy anything. Everything is going on God's plan. But that you can add with an intention of doing something in a progressive way. In a progressive way it would. Then what happens? Any activity that you do becomes simply holy. Holy word comes from holistic. That means to say together. Simple idea is that yes, let's go together. That way. This is what is Sahano Bhunaktu. Sahaviryam Karavavahi. It's all about Saha. That means together we try to go. So that's what is the idea of Indian philosophy. That's what is the holiness, wholesome.
Yeah, thank you, Raghuramji.
You're welcome. Lovely.
Wonderful clarifications.
Hmm.
So this DVG, I think somebody has written in Kannada.
Yeah,
This again, yeah, so not everybody can read Kannada. So this again, Dr. Nagaratna beautifully will explain. She says, this is a very beautiful. I think everybody who is into yoga practice should know this.
Yeah, right.
ಎರಡು ಕೋಣೆಗಳು ನೀ ಮಾಡು ಮನದಾಲೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಹೊರ ಕೋಣೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಲೋಕದ ಆಟವಲ್ಲಗನು ಆಡು ವಿರಮಿಸು ಒಬ್ಬನೇ ಮೌನದಿ ಒಲಮನೆಯ ಶಾಂತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ.
Right.
It says that make two compartments in the mind. Yeah. Outer compartment, play with the world, whatever the world wants. You get angry, all that. But with the realization that inner mind, inner self, you are that peace. You have that peace inside. You have that shanti inside.
Hey Vijay, you can read all that Kannada. I can't read. Huh? You are good.
No, I'm reading. I have the English transliteration.
Okay.
I have the English transliteration.
Yes, very nice.
Yeah. So I think with that thought in mind, saying that we should recognize that we are that inner peace. Our inner self is that peace. We are that quietude inside. We are that pure joy inside. I think with that, let's end. We can make that as a resolve actually.
Right.
Yeah, a sankalpa. So with that, let's end today's session with the Shanti Mantra.
Lovely.
Namaskara Mudra. Sarve bhavantu sukhina. Sarve santu niramaya. Sarve bhadrani pashyantu. Ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti.